Good evening, and I don't care that it's January 24th. I still think it's appropriate to say happy, blessed, prosperous New Year. Welcome to this wonderful time that we have together today. I'm just looking through all of the chats, and I'm just so excited that we have such a great representation, which to me is the true early childhood education and care community. We have home-based, we have private, we have Head Start. Ooh, shout out to all of the related services personnel. I think I saw occupational therapist there. I'm trying to go back. Bilingual pre-K, Rosie, yes, bilingual, multilingual learners in the house is here with us today. See a lot of administrators that are on with us today. So excited to, you've worked all day and then you kind of like, okay, do I or don't I want to do this? Yes, this is really the place to be. Love having administrators on with us because we just have this wonderful opportunity to look at this work. And then if you are an administrator, you start thinking of those ways where you can weave this into in-services for your programs. It is January, and before we know it, June will be here. What might this look like when you are doing your orientations for new staff that's coming on, or beginning of the school year as you think about that? Dee Austin, I'm the family coordinator at is that NLU? Child Development and Family Center, NIU. What does the NIU stand for? If you wouldn't mind coming off mute and sharing a little bit. The Kipera.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's the Northern Illinois University. I'm the family coordinator, so I coordinate services and support for the Preschool for All program and our C Campus program.
Okay, so you have got a lot going on there. So that's NIU. Welcome. Love our family coordinators and family specialists as well. You'll see when we get into this, DEC's recommended practices, as well as NAEYC. They are constantly reminding us as professionals, we cannot do this work and should not even try to do this work without truly engaging families. And hint, there's going to be a lot about family engagement in here today even. I saw Rosie's a bilingual pre-K teacher, K Para _ D187, multilingual family and community liaison. Hey, North Chicago. I am very familiar with North Chicago. Are you with Green Bay, or are you in the Green Bay building?
I work in the North Chicago High School.
Wow, okay. All right.
Well, we serve all the schools.
Okay, so if you are, when you have a moment, go to Green Bay and give Miss Julie and Miss Jennifer big hugs from Dr. Antoinette. I had an opportunity to work with them for a few years and just love North Chicago and Green Bay. Let's see. I'm a teacher's aide. Shout out to paraprofessionals, classroom assistants. Again, if we think about ECHRS 3, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, ECHRS 3 was very quick to remind us that they define staff as any adult that's regularly involved with children. So in a building that is classroom teachers, related services personnel, speech language, occupational therapists, and always our classroom assistants, paraprofessionals, dedicated team members. So where are we today? We're welcoming some of you back. We see some of you have attended either the October and November session or one of them. So for those of you that are coming back for this third session, we welcome you back. And for those of you that said, hey, I didn't attend any of them, we welcome you. And I do want to let you know that we have built this series so that you can benefit from either one session just by joining today or all of them. But we've also done something else to make that really true. You have access to the October 12th and the November sessions, and Karen will put in the chat either a little bit later on, or maybe Karen, when you send out the follow-up email with the evaluation, she'll let you know exactly how you can go and get the recorded sessions from the first two that we've done. So two things. Today, we will recap both of those sessions just briefly, and then this will be a building process. It's not like one of those series when you go to the movies. I didn't see the first two, I felt really lost. You won't feel lost at all, but we also have made provisions for you to be able to go back and watch at your convenience the recorded sessions. We do want to let you know in advance that if you watch recorded sessions, you are not able to receive the credit for those. So this whole series is looking at how we can maximize our practices by joining together. And actually, this started way back when the pandemic first hit, and there was so much support going out for everyone because we all needed it. And we found that participants were saying, hey, we like when we hear from several voices at one time. It shows unity, it gives us an equitable point of view, and it makes it feel like the practices are more doable and sustainable. So these are developmentally appropriate practices. Why are we doing this? Because we want to maximize equitable, high quality early childhood education and care. It is brought to you by, tonight is creating a caring, equitable community of learners and engaging in reciprocal partnerships with families and fostering community connections. And Karen, I think whoever can come off mute and say that fast 5 times should be the ones to get the giveaway at the end. But this is our session for today. I am joined with my wonderful co-hosts today, Becky and Ann. You'll see their names and see a little bit of information about them a little bit later on. This is just a little bit of information about myself. This is about strengthening cross-system partnerships. And it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to do it. So tonight, these partnerships that are largely responsible for a lot of the early childhood education and care programming that goes on in the state, we have all joined together to bring you this series. And here's who they are: Early Choices. And later on today, you'll be hearing from Ann Kramer, who is the project director for Early Choices. You may have even had some involvement in Early Choices. Early Childhood Professional Learning, they do the statewide, as it says, their professional learning. They also facilitate Preschool for All and Preschool for All expansion, coaching. And if you've been seeing any emails going out about the Preschool for All virtual administrative forum, they facilitate those as well. And then STARNET Illinois does all of our technical assistance for students with disabilities across the state. And we will talk about that a little bit later too. There are 6 STARNET regions, and we want you to know who your region is, get involved with your region, because there's always, between ECPL, CHOICES, and STARNET, there are a plethora of wonderful webinars and online services available for you, as well as technical assistance. Everything that we're doing today is grounded in NAEYC, National Association for the Education of Young Children, their developmentally appropriate practice, most recent one, which was released in fall of 2020, and the Division of Early Childhood. This is the National Division of Early Childhood. We are aware that the Illinois Department of Human Services has recently started an early childhood division that's also called DEC. That is germane specifically to Illinois. This DEC is the actual international DEC, which is a subdivision of the Council of Exceptional Children. Their DEC recommended practices for young children. We're going to go straight through tonight. We're not going to take an official break. So if you feel like you need some me time, grab your tea, your coffee, get a drink of water, just need to stand up and stretch, go ahead and do that, and leave the sound on. Come on back to us as soon as you can. Make sure you're taking care of yourself whenever you need to implement adult self-care. This is a safe space. We definitely will be asking you to go into the chat. You know, as educators, we spell check everything in our minds. Just go right in and get in the chat. There's no judgment here. This is a safe space to show yourself some grace. And as Karen said, this wonderful book, which is a hot commodity. You see my poor book, it's all dog-eared, and it's like, look how close I had it. Like, boop, I just turned right there and grabbed it. 5 of these will be given away today. We do want to make sure that during the giveaway, if people have already received books, that they are not getting them again. So that's why we don't announce it tonight. Karen has to make sure she's keeping a record to make sure that we're spreading this wealth of these books. It is a wonderful, wonderful book to have. And even within this book, there are several more resources that you have for free. So we encourage you to just take advantage of it. So we're going to jump right in. When you think about NAEYC's 4th edition of the position statement, how much would you say you know about the 4th edition? Do you know, if you think about a pizza pie, would you say you're at a slice of knowledge, a couple of slices of knowledge, or your knowledge would be the whole pie? Go ahead and put that in the chat for us. Oh, I love a couple of slices, 3/4 of a pie. Yeah, that slice. Most of us are right at that slice level. And this is a deep dish pizza, so woohoo. That means you might know a little bit more than you think you do. The wonderful thing about this is that we've all been looking at it. And to be honest with you, even those of us who would say we do this work on a regular basis, as we've been putting this together, we keep going back to the position paper, which is available free online. If you happen not to be one of the 5 people that get this book, please go to the NAEYC website and the DEC website. There are free resources available to you that you'll be able to use, but we find ourselves going back to them over and over and over again. So I think most of us are sliced-ish, as they say. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, one big bite, Corey. One big bite, the crust pie. I love that. And so, of course, if we ask you about the NAEYC, then we have to also ask about the DEC recommended practices. We went a little healthier here for this choice. We had deep dish before. So when it comes to the Division of Early Childhood, when you're thinking about students with disabilities, where would you say you're at on your knowledge and use of the DEC recommended practices? Again, go ahead and put in the chat. Are you at a slice, a couple of slices, or the whole pie? And as we're seeing this come in, that is one reason we wanted to integrate in the DEC recommended practices with this whole series, is because, NAEYC does a really great job about getting their product out there. We know a lot of NAEYC accreditation, so a lot of our community-based programs are using NAEYC accreditation. DEC sometimes kind of gets relegated to those who are specifically in special education, so maybe those EI programs or the early childhood special education programs. So we do find that not as many people have that knowledge of the DEC recommended practices. So yeah, that's kind of right on par. That's why everything we're doing tonight, we're integrating those practices. And you're going to see real quickly that DEC is very clear that yes, these practices target and are largely for students that are receiving specialized services, but it's not only for them. You all should have received an email with a handout of this wonderful reflection tool. Please use it throughout the night. We are not offended at all if your head is down. We hope that means that you're writing and taking notes. You'll see that it's sectioned out for you to be able to take some notes in. And then at the end, you're going to have a moment of silence from us where you'll be able to kind of put all your thoughts together for today. And then throughout, we'll be having some time where we'll be just saying, hey, pause and reflect. Go back to we're calling this the reflection tool, and you'll be able to take some notes that you can take away with you. So what's our recap from October 12th? That was where we were really talking about defining developmentally appropriate practices and the DEC recommended practices. They actually came to us and were completed out of draft form in 2014. Really want you to notice that this is ongoing work. You'll notice that the DEC recommended practices were first developed in 1991. And as children change, the times change, as our country was moving from No Child Left Behind to Every Student Succeeds Act, DEC is constantly going back to these recommended practices and updating them, where the most recent one came out right before the Every Student Succeeds Act was signed into law. Here's what I love about these practices. They are explicit in saying, yes, it is focused on those students who we know they have been identified, they have a documented disability on record. We know that maybe we've looked at their EI information. I see we've had some folks that are with Early Head Start or PI with us. You know, we're looking at that through Child Find, and we're looking at their developmental delays, and we want to address that. But they're also very clear in saying, don't look at this and say, oh, this is special ed. No, it is not. It is for any child between the ages of birth to 5, which we know those are the crucial years to look at children, see what children's needs are, and start intervening as much as possible. So this is not simply for students with disabilities. There are 8 topics within the DEC recommended practices. We'll be talking about one of them specifically tonight. And the reason we chose this pictograph is because we really believe that the DEC recommended practices can be threaded throughout anything when we talk about developmentally appropriate practices, these topics, these related topics can be thread through each and every one of the developmentally appropriate practices, techniques that we've already talked about or that we'll be talking about today. And then here's the NAEYC position statement. You'll note that NAEYC is birth through age 8. So that is for our colleague from North Chicago that said, hey, I'm up in the high school, but we service all students. Take it back to them. Birth to age 8 really is early childhood education and care. So all of these practices will work all the way up through really 3rd grade. They remind us that we need to be culturally, linguistically, and ability focused, which I love that NAEYC in this position paper, they were very clear to say, we must look at the ability of our children. Are they advanced ability, average ability, disability? Are they twice exceptional? And then in November, we talked about the guiding principles of child development. And we really looked at how the position statement was broken out. Again, weaving those DEC recommended practices throughout. Within those guiding principles, there are 9. What's new, as they went back and looked over the principles, they kind of took the 12 principles and worked them into 9 distinct principles. So that reflects new research. And then especially for NAEYC, they were able to look at the specifics of Every Student Succeeds Act, which is built on equity and built on, being culturally relevant and linguistically relevant, ability relevant, and add all of that into the 9 principles. Again, reminding us that all domains of child development, when we look at children, children are whole children, and they have whole experiences, the physical development, their cognitive development, social and emotional development, looking at how they develop linguistically. We have a lot of a multilingual learner support on with us tonight, which I love. And Karen, we don't have this in here, but maybe we can put a link in at the end to direct them to some of the WIDA resources that ECPL offers for WIDA early years. That would be great. So this is what those core principles are reminding us, and it's through a whole equity lens. When we think about challenging behavior, it's so easy to get stuck on challenging behavior, which is the tip of the iceberg. But when you get to the part of the iceberg that we don't see, the whole big chunk underneath, when you unpack it, challenging behavior really could be an indicator of where children need mental health support, social emotional development, learning and competency, identity development, academic development, cognitive development, physical health development, All of these things help us be able to take these practices and really teach and provide learning opportunities for the whole child. That was a lot. Taking a breath. As you think about that recap, share one aha moment in the chat. Something you're like, that's something to think about, or I want to investigate that further, and go ahead and share that in the chat with us, please. What you're going to do, that chat blast just means that you're going to type it in. You're not going to press enter until I give you a countdown. So you'll put your one aha, and then I'm going to count us down. Also, say 3, 2, 1, enter, and then we'll see one big waterfall of beautiful ideas at the same time. So go ahead and share your one aha moment from that recap, or even the DEC recommended practice, those 8 topics, and then I'll count you down. Okay, I'm going to count us down. If you've got anything in the chat, 3, 2, 1, press enter, and let's see what we got. Yes, I love it. Challenging behavior autumn always means there's an underlying issue going on. It's not just that thing that draws our attention, which is the challenging behavior itself. Jennifer, making connections. Yes, early head start. Early head start. I mean, isn't that really where, if we can get the foundational pieces of early childhood education and care, which is really birth to 3, we go a long, long way for supporting our children, our families, and educators. Justine, I hope I'm saying your name right. There are types of mental health, social emotional, identity development, academic development. Rachel, thank you. We love hearing that you're excited to investigate DEC further, and we will have some links at the end to share with you all. There are local NAEYC chapters and DEC subdivisions right here in Illinois, and so we'll give you the information so that you can learn more and get involved. Challenging behaviors as a lens. Jen, most students have SE needs. Ms. Lee, social self-restraint, social emotional. Yes, Penny, thank you. A child in a classroom. We talked about this from one of the previous webinars. So if you get a chance to go back and look at those recordings, we talked about remembering that when we have children in our classrooms that may not quite meet the, fit the mold, this is not a child who is a problem that needs to be solved. They are a person that needs to be embraced. Love it. Thank you all so much for sharing. And we are moving right along.
Okay. I am Becky Handler from STARNET Region 6. STARNET Region 6 is in the south suburbs of Illinois. Just briefly about myself, I am married with 2 children, and each child went in the direction of one parent. My son, Aaron, who got married this summer, is in logistics business like his father, and he just recently moved to Florida because his bride was from Florida and had done her time in the cold weather. And my daughter, Dana, moved to Philadelphia, where I am from and my whole family is, and she is a child life specialist at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. So, and I talk about my children a lot when I present. From people from Region 6 will know that. During COVID, I rediscovered my love for the outdoors. I think it just does great things for us, really helps ground us. My husband and I are big walkers, especially in the freezing cold weather. But I have to say it was nice walking in Florida this weekend in the 80-degree weather. So that's just a little bit about me. And now Ann and I are going to jump into starting to look at those 9 principles. So our first principle is this: creating a caring, equitable community of learners. I'm not going to read this to you. But one thing I want to back up for a second. When not the slide, I'm sorry, Antoinette, I meant me. When the position statement was revised, I said to myself, I was one of those people that probably, even though I worked for STARNET, really only knew a slice or two. It was a book on the bookshelf. We sometimes quoted it in our presentations, but I really wanted to make it come alive. When I went to classrooms, I wanted to be able to talk about it and implement it. So it is possible. My suggestion to you is go to the NAEYC website and download the position statement and put it on your desktop, because I find myself just opening it up a lot. The other thing that I want to say is I really make it a mission or whatever. I want you to see that ECHRS, Creative Curriculum, NAEYC, DEC, they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying this is what is best for children. So it's not another layer that we're adding on to you. They're all saying the same thing. So when we talk about a caring, equitable community, I'm not going to read it to you, but these are the things that we want to look at. We want our kids to know that they're valued. And we want to spend time in our classrooms nurturing those relationships, right? We have those kids when they're young, we can mold them, we want to nurture them. And then we really want to let the members of our community know that they're respected and that they are being held accountable to others in the way that they behave. And yes, we can start this at a young age. And by starting at a young age, we know that we can make a difference. So let me go into each of these points now a little bit. Next slide. So each member is valued. Each member of the community is valued by others and is recognized for the strengths they bring. So I want us really to do some self-reflecting with this one. And it's not always easy. We have to look at the children in our classroom and our coworkers and stop and think, what value do they bring to the classroom? And the ones that are the most difficult are the ones with the challenging behavior, but they bring value, and you need to stop and take the time and find that value. And that value is a place to start, helping them learn and break through to them. Does a child from another culture feel represented in your classroom? And this is what I mean about coming alive. I'm guilty. I used to go into classrooms helping them get ready for ECHRS monitors, and I would say, okay, make sure your diversity stuff is out and open, like put those puzzles on the top. It's not enough just to have the stuff in your classroom. If a child picks a puzzle of an Arab child, you want to talk about that, right? That's when we use technology. Do you know where this child's grandparents might have come from? If you have that poster on the wall of the child in the wheelchair, talk about why he's in that wheelchair. The other thing is, I'm a speech pathologist. So when we talk about abilities, disabilities, if you have a nonverbal child in your class, I can only feel valued if you give me a way to communicate all day long, not just during circle time. I need to be able to communicate all day long so I can express my thoughts and then feel like a valued person. In the document, in the position statement, it says educators demonstrate ongoing interest in each child's unique knowledge, skills, and cultural linguistics experiences, and recognize that these are assets to learning. So my recommendation to you is, in your free time, write down the names of every kid in your class. And you're going to see the first kids you're going to write down are the kids that cause you to have gray hair. Okay, little Miss Susie, follow the rules, is going to be the last name that you remember. Over time, you don't have to do this all at once, but jot down what they bring to your classroom. What is their uniqueness? Okay, and that will help you start valuing every child. You want to demonstrate to them that they are valued in those ways, talking about the puzzle, talking about the poster, talking about the different holiday that they eat. This is a big one to me. We all spend all this money on all that culturally different food in the house center, right? In dramatic play. It's not enough for them to throw sushi and challah and tacos in a big bowl and make you lunch. Stop and talk about the food. Who eats that food? Bring in a can that has more of that food. That's how I feel valued in your classroom. Go ahead. The other thing to look about is we lately have been spending a lot of time talking about culture and disability, right? But there are so many other things that go into a person. And these are just a few, and I'm sure this little wheel doesn't even have everything, right? So think about, you know, is that child the one child that's a different religion? You know, does that child come from a family of two mothers? Look about that. You know, is this child the youngest child in your classroom? And that's maybe why you see some of the behaviors. So we have to go past just culture and ability. And there's many ways that a child can be seen in your classroom. The other thing is, if we teach and demonstrate this acknowledgement, this value to children, they're going to learn it. And so here's my first Dana story. She talked about, and I think she even did this in her like interviews for grad school, that I was the mother that stopped at the mall and pointed out the kid in the wheelchair and had my kids wave to that child or explain to them what it was. And at a young age, my children were not scared when they saw a child of different abilities. At the school, they were including the children for lunch, and my son came home very scared because these kids didn't know how to eat and it seemed gross to him. So we then talked about it, and I talked to the school. That's inclusion, okay? Putting the kids at the table and not explaining it to the other kids, that's not inclusion. Those kids didn't feel any more valued eating lunch with the second graders than they did eating lunch alone. So think about this and think about how you can really make every child feel valued. And then finally, the document says, by observing and participating in the community, children learn about themselves, their world, and how to develop positive constructive relationships, right? Because if I see myself in my world, I feel positive, and then I'm able to make more relationships. So children are represented in your classroom. I talked about this, right? Not enough just to put it out. How are they portrayed positively? Even if you don't have a child with a disability in your classroom, you still should have posters of that or puzzles, right? That's how children get to know and value other children. This is a big one. Differences and individuality should be embedded throughout the activities. So when a child needs to hold a sensory toy all day long, that's fine, but explain it to the children. When you need to add something to the block center so you can get a child to start engaging in play, that's fine. You'll explain that to the monitors when they come to your classroom. And then the other thing, which is really important, is adults support the differences of children and they understand it. So you might be attending this. Share this information with your assistant. Share this information with your coordinator that maybe is in charge of early childhood through 6th grade and doesn't really have time for early childhood. So we want the adults to understand and support children with differences. Next slide. This is from the equity statement, that's the other thing. Antoinette talked about how DEC and the DAP go together. The equity statement also goes together. And these are just two kind of food for thought I want you to think about. Consider the developmental, cultural, and linguistic appropriateness of your learning environment and your teaching practices for each child. So besides doing that little list of kids in your class, maybe this Friday before you leave for the weekend, everybody's gone, just walk around and look at your classroom. We're halfway through the year now, okay? Is it appropriate for all children? Do all children have access to things? Are all children represented? Is it developmentally appropriate, right? Do you have a lower child that maybe needs a different type of puzzle? Do you have a higher child that is kind of wreaking havoc to your classroom? Maybe things are too simple. So take a look at your classroom. And then this is a difficult one, but we have to consider our own biases, right? We all have implicit bias. And is that contributing at all to your interactions with children? Even an implicit bias can be about, you might be frustrated with that child because that parent never takes anything out of the backpack. That parent never picks up their child from school. That parent does not seem like they care. We can reflect that onto the child when really maybe we don't know all that's going on at home, right? And we don't mean to, we know we shouldn't, but that's what an implicit bias is. It's sometimes hard to think about that. Next slide. And then this, remember that the learning environment and its materials reflect what you do and you don't value by what's present and what's admitted. Okay, so take that time to look at your classroom. So just chat for a second. If just from those few slides I did before I have a few more slides, what's kind of sticking out to you? Do you have any aha moments about your classroom? Is there something you think you need to change? Is there something you need to add? If you would just put that in the chat. An implicit bias that you're kind of aware of and working on. Or you can unmute if you'd like. Remembering this bias. Yeah, it's not easy. We think that we're covering all grounds. Oh, I like that. Oh, thank you, Anne. The balcony look. Slightly more challenging resources for a couple of my older students, right? I think that's what I mean. We kind of have this focus on disability and ethnicity and culture, which is great. But don't forget, if I'm in your PFA program, I might have gotten in there because my mother is a single mother. It doesn't mean that my ability is lower. So do you have things to challenge me? Challenging, okay, incorporating more diversity when going into other homes. I see things differently when I see, they see. Okay, good. So next slide. Thank you for sharing. Okay, just again, a little reminder. It's more than just the materials, right? So we all got hung up from Eckers about making sure we have the materials they're telling us to have, but we want every child to feel and be valued in our classroom. Even if I'm in a wheelchair, can I still play? And on CHOICE's website or YouTube channel, they have some wonderful videos that show examples of setting up that environment. If I'm in circle, am I the only one sitting in a wheelchair and everybody else is on a carpet square? How am I going to feel valued then? All right. So it goes back to your attitudes and your beliefs. Anybody can throw in a few books into their classroom, but if you're really communicating these beliefs to the children, they're going to feel valued. And really, and we know this, right, as the early childhood teachers, little kids are the best place to start. There's always one mother hen in the classroom that wants to be that first helper. And as soon the other kids that might be shying off, it can be some of that fear and some of that unknown. The child with the challenging behavior that's throwing themselves on the floor, we need to explain that to the children, why that's happening, or to the best of our abilities that we understand. So take that bird's eye view, as Anne said, of your classroom, reflect on your children, and see if you can really make an effort to make all children valued. Okay, number 2. Other thing is relationships are nurtured. The document says that children learn about their world around them through interactions with other members of the community. So we work hard to build this relationship with each child and help foster the relationships with children. So just think to yourself, how do you build relationships in the classroom? If you want to chat, you can, but I think we spend a lot of time in August and September doing this, right? That we want to make a classroom community. But I think as the year goes on, we might not focus on it as much. The position statement, I cannot talk. The position statement tells us that we need to focus on this all year round. We want to nurture these relationships all year round. Next slide. And how do they do that, right? I have to have a sense of belonging. Children are provided opportunities to take on social roles and responsibilities in the classroom. If I feel like I'm contributing to the classroom, then I feel like I'm important and I feel like I belong. That's why we have jobs, right? But make those jobs important. I went into one classroom and I loved it. She had, the name of the jobs were big vocabulary. So the electrician turned off the lights. There was the horticulturist, which watered the plants. So I feel important if I have a job title like that. Again, I'll feel important if you're embedding my culture and my values into the classroom. So take a look at that also. And that we're working to make all children feel that they belong, right? That's building that relationship. Next slide. A wonderful book, and we just, in Region 6, we just finished a book study with this, is this Powerful Interactions. It's a simple book. It's from NAEYC, and just put up the resource. But it really talks about, this is the other thing with Eckers. I think we got a little too hung up on asking high-level questions. We don't just want to bombard kids with questions. If we want to build relationships, we have to have conversations with kids, okay? So in this book, they talk about staying in the moment, continue to learn about the children, listen to them, okay? So listen, when I was just away this weekend on the airplane, I heard this little kid for like 15 times. He was like, Dad, 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 Dad. You know, I wanted to say to Dad, stop watching your movie and just answer your child. So listen to our kids. It takes 2 minutes to have a conversation with a child. Let them tell you the silly thing that happened, or let them tell you about their sick grandmother. This is a great book. And by having these powerful interactions in your classroom, you really are going to build relationships with the children and relationships amongst each other. Okay, and then the third and final point is each member respects and is accountable to others. And what the book says is relationships are nurtured with each child and educator, facilitate the development of positive relationships among children. I think we work hard on this already, right? Many of us are using the pyramid. Eckers tells us to have our cozy corner. We know that if I don't have positive relationships and strong social skills and social emotional skills in early childhood, those academics are not going to come easy. So just think for a minute, and then in the chat, let me know how you are, doing this in your classroom. So how are kids held accountable? How do you help kids with their emotions? While you're thinking about that, I'm going to just read this to you from Powerful Interactions. Guiding children's behavior is something done throughout the day, not just when a child acts out in a way that's unsafe or unacceptable. You guide behavior by establishing predictable routines, setting clear rules with children, and modeling kindness and respect. Read books about emotions, exactly, right? Modeling, consistency, and we all have to be consistent. So just an example of this is we had a great presenter yesterday, Carolyn McGuire, and she talked about working with children and teaching them how to be good winners and good losers in a game. So when I lose, don't teach me that when I lost Candyland. Do a little small group and teach me this beforehand, okay? But I also need to know how to be a good winner that's not obnoxious. So take time, and all these things that you're coming up now, right? Take time to teach these things, so when it's in the moment, you can remind them of the tools that you've already given them. Next slide. And you guys are saying all of this of what I'm saying, right? Again, it's not enough just to slap up the emotion poster on the wall. We need to talk about kids' feelings, talk about how they're feeling when they walk in, talk about how they're feeling when they leave. And I know you do this in all different ways, but this is what we should be talking about at circle time, and not about dressing the weather bear, right? This is a life skill, being able to express my emotions. And then just 2 more pictures. Again, how are we teaching self-regulation? And you guys have done this, you know, these were the examples you're giving this to me. But we all set up our cozy corner, but we have to take the time to teach them how to use that cozy corner. I tell a story of a little boy that was fighting from a very bad area, and he was fighting for a block, and he put the block, he let go of the block, and he came over to the teacher and he said, I need to deep breathe. And he sat in a chair, which to me, I thought was like a timeout chair, but it wasn't. It was a little corner in the room that the teacher found, and she had taught them how to do some of the conscious discipline breathing. And that little boy did 3 little bubble breaths and got up, and he went back to the block center. The teacher did not get involved. So she had taught him this way to self-regulate, right? And how to be responsible. He didn't need her at all, because she had taken the time. And yes, if we do this in September, January is a great time to redo it. And then just one last picture. This is actually, I think, right from the pyramid model training. What a great way. This teaches kids how to line up. It's predictable, but you're also setting up the environment, right? Because I'm lining up next to a peer, so I can have conversations. I can help the person next to me. I have a buddy. So these are the ways that we teach that responsibility in the classroom that is so important. And thank you for all your chats. So that's
What I was just going to say, what I love about this too is, you know, if you think about my teaching strategies or early learning scale or DRDP, whatever your assessment tool might be, we know, and it's okay, we should do this as educators. We want to work smarter, not harder. This is so nice for social emotional development and understanding what the expectations are. But look, you're teaching colors, you're teaching numbers, you know, 2 feet go here, spatial relations, all of those things that, you know, when you're sitting down, oh my gosh, it is the, you know, mid-year interim or checkpoint period, and you're taking your notes. We can observe so much of what children are able to do, what they know and are able to do beyond just these things. And that's one thing we're thinking about, integrating these practices, how far reaching they can be in really any early childhood education and care learning environment, from early Head Start to PI to early childhood special education, preschool for all expansion, and our home programs. You can do these same things. Particularly in our home programs, because you can really kind of set that environment up and change it around as much as the children's needs let you know that this needs to happen. And our private or parochial school settings, we can implement these as well, even if you may not be using, you know, the creative curriculum, whatever curriculum, like Beta Book, you know, Becca Books is one that a lot of private schools use, especially in the Archdiocese. All of these things can be integrated throughout however you're teaching and learning curriculum, instruction, your standards, whether it's the Head Start framework, they can all be weaved in and out. And that leads us to going back to that DEC recommended practices. Now, we did say we had that little pictograph that kind of reminds us to take that needle and thread and weave, you know, these 8 topics throughout, but each of the topics has parameters and each of those topics has indicators. So everything that Becky just shared with us fits wonderfully with DEC's recommended practices about interactions. The materials that we select. We think about all of our children. We have children who, again, and I remember a few years ago consulting in a program, and they were really having trouble with that child that was kind of like the middle of the road, right? That it's that student that you can't quite, they're not giving you challenging behavior. They're not, I like to call boo, you know, your boo knows who they are. They walk in the classroom, they're like, I'm here, class can begin. Like, we know who that boo is. We know who that child that's like, oh gosh, they're here today, that challenging behavior. But as Becky said, who's that one that doesn't come directly to your mind when it's time for those developing relationships and interactions? DEC's recommended practices, as well as NAEYC, they really define what interaction looks like. Again, the target, the priority is the student qualifies for specialized services, but we say this all the time. No strategy is only good for one child or one set of children. Eckers 3 tells us, what are you doing for all? If you are in a district like North Chicago, they use class and they use Eckers 3. If you're in Chicago, they use class. These interactions, the way that DEC has unpacked this is letting us know all of these things that Becky said, selected interactional practices to promote specific child outcomes. It is okay to put out there, you know, Miss Antoinette is doing this because Miss Antoinette wants you to know XYZ. It's okay to say that to children. It helps them be able to tune in on what's relevant. And sometimes it can be the hook, like this may not be important to them, but when you explain it to them, it brings about those personal interactions. And this is also, you see, I think good for families as well. So this is all of us as we look at this one particular DEC recommended practice. Now, here's something that I love, and I think Ann is going to put a link in here for you. We talked about earlier on, we said that DEC's recommended practices, they do a lot of partnering, and I just can't say enough about ECTA, Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. If you need a jump start of any in-service for your teachers, even communicating with parents, ECTA has some beautiful resources and tools. You can take your time. You see this one is related to the topic of interaction. You can pull it. You can do some self-evaluating if you need to, just like Becky said. You know, sometimes when the children are gone, just taking that moment to look around the classroom and see, you know, I set this classroom up in my mind for it to function like this. Is it really functioning like this on the level of the children? And that's one thing ECTA does. And if you've ever had an opportunity to be trained on the Inclusive Classroom Profile, ICP, it really changed my trajectory as a consultant, because one of the things ICP says is, what about through the lens of the child? As the adult, you know, we have everything, all these things set up. It's very much like that individualized learning plan that's becoming very popular now in our country. Go back and look at it through the lens of the child, and not just the child, all of your children with disabilities, your children who are multilingual learners. I'm kind of looking at that wheel that Becky had. Are we looking at it in an equitable way, not just from my point of view as the adult? And sometimes that, you know, those little chairs that when you sit in them, you have to pray, you know, please let me be able to get back up, without the use of 911. Sometimes you got to sit down in those chairs, get on that rug where they're playing, go and sit in your interest areas, your choice areas. What does it look like? Are they able to have adult-child interactions, peer-to-peer interactions? Can they self-regulate? That student that Becky talked about, self-regulation is taught. He was able to say, you know what, I need to get somewhere and sit down, literally, and just kind of did that. Have we set the classroom up to help us do that? And these tools from ECTA, I just think are a wonderful, wonderful way to help you just jumpstart that process. And remember, ongoing, go back to it over and over again. Just like, you know, when we came back from winter break, if you're using creative curriculum, they have that beginning of the year study. You come back and after winter break, you do that beginning of the year study again. We do it for students. Let's do it for ourselves as well. These checklists and these tools from ECTA help us to remember to stay, you know, we sometimes we need to be redirected, or just sometimes you can look and say, hey, I started my year out. It's going the way I wanted it to go. And how do I know? Because I've done a check and balance of what my intentions were. And that's always a great thing to do. So real quickly, and we've been talking about ECHRS 3, and we have to move beyond the point of the monitors are coming, the monitor, you know, like Paul Revere, the British are coming, the British are coming, ECHRS 3, the monitor is coming, the monitor is coming. ECHRS 3 really is meant to be a tool for programs to use for daily practices, not just pull it out because the monitors are coming. It's research-based, it's evidence-based. So just take a moment where we are now to just reflect, grab your little reflection tool sheet and just dot down how, and you can either say, how do I, or you could put, how can I, right? Because as Becky said, and as we said earlier, we're constantly going back to looking in the book over and over again. How can I use developmentally appropriate practices and these recommended practices to support my work with ECHRS 3, my curriculum, whatever it may be, how I'm implementing instruction, how I'm implementing play-based authentic assessment. This is what we call stacking plates, rather than trying to, you know, keep all these plates spinning. I got ECHRS 3, I got my curriculum, I got instruction over here, I got assessment over here. Then the people are coming in the monitor. Now they want me to do this. Now what we're trying to do is help you stack those plates, because when you can stack your evidence-based practices, instead of trying to keep spinning them on all these separate sticks, the fidelity of practice is much, much higher. It's sustainable, it's doable, and we feel more accomplished at the end of each day and each week, rather than completely and totally exhausted. So take a moment and put some notes in your reflection tool. Don't have to put this in the chat, but we really want to keep drawing you back to this tool. And if you get a chance to look at the recordings of the first and second ones, I do believe that those reflection tools are there. They all look the same. We just kind of changed the heading for each one with the specifics, but we really want these to be tools that you can take with you as you move forward. So take a moment to do that. And then we're about ready to close ourselves out.
Yeah, we're gonna move along here to the whole second section, which is all around family. But good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ann Kramer. I'm the project leader for Early Choices, and I'm going to put my email out there. Becky, I put yours in. Somebody had asked for it earlier. So just a little bit, you can see I had a daughter who recently got married. So those are super fresh pictures, right? And that's my granddaughter up there in the corner, Esme. And I think and my choices team, work is super important to me. I love my job. And so Early Choices is all about supporting young children being included with their same age peers. So we are all about supporting kiddos with disabilities being served in those regular programs. And so that team down there on the lower right-hand corner is the Early Choices team. We are small but mighty. We cover the whole state. STARNET has regions, we got everybody. And if you're any bit of a sports fan, you can figure out there that I'm a Packer fan. So that's Curly Lambeau. We rub his toe before every Packer game that we go to, which is only about once a year for us. But a little that's okay. We're a blended family. So I've got a daughter and a son Austin, and I have a stepdaughter, my husband's daughter, Sam, and her husband. So that's like our whole family there. So I come at this disability thing. You can't really tell from that picture. Austin happens to have Down syndrome. So he's kind of like the motivator for me through all of this. But yeah, Antoinette, let's move along. We've got a lot of key points. When you look at this book, and it is so heavy because they use really like heavyweight paper or something. Engaging in partnerships with families and communities. They have like so many points. I couldn't even get them all on one slide, right? So they go all the way to G. But just as you look at these, I think I'm going to have to skip my little activity and just kind of highlight for you. All of these pieces relate back. Engaging in partnerships relate back to relationships and all of those connections that we can make to support families in being part of feeling valued. All those pieces that Becky talked about earlier around membership, around making sure that we're being respectful and talking about learning about differences and asking questions to learn about those differences. It's all here with the families and the community and all the pieces we do with our children, we need to be doing with our families to build those relationships. And I know we've got some family engagement people on today. So this is your work, you live and breathe this. So we're just going to hit some of the highlights and kind of whet your appetite, give you a few resources, and hope that you'll dig in on your own, right? Like you might have that like bite of the pizza and maybe you're going to dig in and get a couple slices or get all the way to the whole pie. So I'm going to dig into that, the next slide. This is my favorite quote. No significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. And this quote was when I was attending a developmentally appropriate practice workshop that we were presented as STARNET, ECPL, and Early Choices. We were all there. And the presenter was talking about the DAP position statement, and this was one of the quotes, and it was like, oh my goodness, and Dee Dee's with me. It hit me so clearly. I have been doing this work for a long time, and I used to bop in, blah, 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 drop my magic ideas and be like, oh my God, I'm so excited I got to share all this stuff with you, and then leave and be like, oh yeah, that lady came and she had some cool stuff, right? But they didn't do anything with it. Like it wasn't enough. And what was the secret sauce? It's that relationship piece. And so all of this content that we've tucked in here around families is about building those significant relationships. So how do you do it? We can go to the next one. How do you build respectful, reciprocal relationships? It is the book will talk about how complex and dynamic it is. And I have a couple of resources here, and I will put them in the chat. This information around the building champions comes from the Kellogg Foundation. I don't know what the first WKK Kellogg, I don't know. But if you want to explore more around kind of building a community of champions, check out this resource. And really, these same elements are repeated in the DAP book, but also in the recommended practices, in that inclusive classroom profile that Antoinette mentioned. All of these pieces, it's the same best practices, right? Just kind of maybe formulated in a different way or packaged in a different way. But really recognizing families as those valued partners, and recognizing how only a family knows their kiddo best, and they know their own culture and community best. And so we need to be tapping them instead of telling them what we know, finding out what they know, finding out what's important to them, and having a conversation to build on that. That is the way we get to those significant relationships. Another, and we kind of touched on this too, so I won't dwell here too long, but this myth of cultural competency, and I like I said, I've been doing this work a long time, and I remember back in the 80s when I was first a professional, and I would like go to workshops on, like how to support your, I can't even say it because it was so icky. So to supporting people from a different culture, and like you would learn like, oh, people from this culture, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh my goodness, it was so terrible. Like, can you imagine? Like, if I think now, like if someone said, oh, I know what it's like to be in a blended family, it must be like this for you. And it's like, no, how do you know my story? I know what it's like to have a person with a disability. So I know what it's like to be the mother of Austin Kramer. Like, no, you don't. I know we have some similarities and we can have a conversation and we can build off of that. And that's great, but don't tell me what you think is best, right? Let's have a conversation. I'll tell you what I know. You tell me what you know, and we can have a conversation. And so this idea that we could that we know things about other people, we really need to approach this from more of an inquiry perspective. This is what this is what I know. What can you teach me? What's important to you? And building those relationships from an inquiry standpoint instead of a I know it standpoint. And then of course, the collaborative relationships with families. How do we build those? And, we know that there are many kind of foundational pieces, right? We invite our families in. We look at ways, to support our families in participation. We ask them their needs. We ask them to fill out surveys. We ask them to come to, coffees or teas so we can get feedback. And those are very basic strategies we use. But again, just as Becky said about your classroom, I'd like you to kind of think from that balcony view around your family engagement pieces and think about, are we doing those things in the way that we want to do them? Or are we doing them in the ways our families are asking for? And so sometimes those are not the same thing, right? Like what works for me might not work for Antoinette or for Becky, right? And so we really need to be thinking about what from that perspective. And certainly just some basics around communication. You can go to the next one, Antoinette. The bidirectional communication and making sure that we offer a variety of ways that families have to access us, that we're remain flexible. Like, oh, they said they were texting and now we have to use phone calls, whatever. And those like seem very concrete, but they help us build those relationships and trust, and constantly examining our own implicit bias and making sure that that wheel of the wheel of identities that Becky showed, we're thinking of that too with our families, and how our families are not just one of those, right? Like they may have many features to their identity, and making sure that we're sensitive to that and keeping that in mind as we create these strategies for communication. And then I've got a little resource here for you on this next one, which is this Mackenzie Weintraub. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. So she's actually a pyramid trainer, and that's her website. But then this particular video is just one around having hard conversations with families. And I love her videos because they're also like bookmarked. So you can be like, okay, I don't need to hear this part. I just want to hear this part. So it's like 4 minutes long and you can go right to the minute you want. And she also, oh my goodness, those schedules and tools that we use in the classroom that Becky was talking about, she has great examples of those. And so, you know, check her out if you haven't. But really what I appreciate, she's also a family engagement person, is she really thinks about that family perspective and gives you some strategies to do that and some questions to ask to be supportive and to be a learner with your families. And then, you know, the DAP position statement and the book really talk a lot about how we can involve families as a source of information about their kiddos, and using what families know, using families' experiences. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this from your families, right? You say, oh my goodness, this little guy, he's, you know, doing this at in our program, and mom and dad are like, yeah, no, never seen that. You know, and you're like, okay, how could that be? And so getting, you know, finding out from families, okay, so maybe it's not happening. So what is, you know, tell me more about, you know, if it's a mealtime thing, tell me about your meal times. What works? What is, how do you keep him engaged during mealtime or whatever it is? So just always looking for strategies that involve families and keep their information and their perspective at the forefront. So, and of course, that last piece around community, we can't do this in isolation. Our communities have rich resources and we really need to be tapping those all the time. And for some of us, that's easy, right? Because we live and work in the same community. For others, we might not live and work in the same community. And so how do we build those relationships? And it's such a two-way street, right? Because our programs benefit so much when we have that strong community engagement. It benefits our big picture structure, like, you know, getting more children to our programs, having access to our programs, just getting awareness that we're out there and we provide high quality access for young kiddos. And then of course, you know, they give back to us with great learning and more public relations. So connecting with your community is huge. So Antoinette, do we have time for this, or are we?
You're doing good. Yes.
Okay, so I've been yammering. I want to hear from you guys. What are some strengths you already have in place around engaging with your families and building those community connections? And or is there an area you need to grow? And you can just, you know, say, we've got this, or I need to learn more about. What have you been thinking as you've been listening? Man, I know you got good strengths out there. You're still typing. That's it. Oh yeah, Marissa, you have you can have a relationship because you're with your families all the time in a family childcare. Yeah. And conversations. Oh, and Penny's going to invite folks more into the classroom. Yeah. Galena is going to do some home visiting. And yeah, communication, check-in phone calls. I love it. And someone brought up the question around two-way communication with families that speak different languages. It can be a challenge. And so looking for strategies already, different resources in different languages. I know if you haven't checked out the Illinois Early Learning Project, they have many tip sheets in several different languages. So Chinese, Korean, okay, I'm stuck on a Spanish, Polish, French. So there's lots of, different resources out there.
And I think another thing too, circling back to one of our colleagues was saying, families love to see the pictures of their children. When Becky was talking about, those emotion boards, a lot of them do come to us, they're kind of already made. Take some pictures of the children in your classroom. It's not only does it help them see their self, but it helps them like, what does sad look like? Sad might look different for each individual child. So you could maybe be able to have that all across your classroom. And you could have it either in place of the one that we might get from Lakeshore or whatever, which those are great. I believe even the Pyramid has them on their NCPMI website, but how wonderful it is to maybe right next to that, let the children see their self. I mean, that's a surefire way to get the diversity, because you're actually using the children who are in your classroom and helping them be able to see themselves there.
Yeah, and one comment that you missed because they were flying by, someone said something really important. Really using, we do those family surveys or some kind of survey in the beginning of the year, but really using that information. And again, it's January, pull out that survey again. If mom and dad work 2 jobs, they're not coming to family night. What else can you do? I tell the story that my son's 4th grade teacher asked for volunteers to cut fabric. Well, I was a working mom, so I was able to do that at home. And I felt like I was at least contributing to my 4th grade son's classroom, even if I couldn't, come in and work the party or whatever. So go back to those surveys that you asked the parents. And then the pictures are a wonderful idea, right? We all like to get pictures of our kids. So I love that person who does the Google pictures. Parents love to see pictures of their kids in action.
And you know what, in today's world, it's so easy to keep those handy, right? So I know Mackenzie had, she had some great strategies around visual resources. So I also put if you don't have access to some of those and you need some help with some, I gave you a free one from, that's from Head Start. They have these visual supports that run the gamut. They're free to send them out on some.
So now what we want to do, it's when you're doing any type of online or virtual professional learning, it's kind of like the radio or on the news, like there's never supposed to be dead air. There's always supposed to be talking. But we think it's really important to stop talking sometimes so you can think, right? A lot of times these practices, we know what to do, but you just don't have the moment to just kind of sit and think and reflect. And that's one of the National School Board Association, they're constantly saying, high quality teachers, they pause and they reflect on their own practices. So we want you to go back, grab your reflection tool. See how we did that? We're calling it a reflection tool. And we are literally going to close our mouths for a good 2 minutes. And we want you, before you go in the chat, take some notes. Refer to your reflection tool, jot down your thoughts about today, all of it, aha moments, uh-oh moments, your and is like, I got a clarifying question. We're gonna silence ourselves, give you 2 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back. And feel free to turn your camera off so that, if you like me, get a furrowed brow when I'm routing, feel free to do that. And in 2 minutes, you'll hear my little timer go, that's the little chirping timer. And then we'll come on back and talk. Okay, there's the little chirp chirp. Go ahead and take, put a thought. I see you, Miss Rache. How are you? Happy blessed New Year, my love. Go ahead and put a thought in the chat for us. I also want to let you know that we have been, as promised, we put, and we're going to go over this, we've put some links in there to the Illinois AEYC, which is the Illinois subdivision of the national NAEYC. We also in the chat put the information for the Illinois DEC, and they are the subdivision for the national DEC, which we just had a great international conference, hosted the International DEC conference in Chicago last September, and got some wonderful things coming up for 2023. Also putting in the chat the website for ECPL, Early Choices, and Illinois STARNET. But we do want you to just go ahead and put a thought in the chat as we're about to close out. Penny, you just became my BFF on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and everything else, because when you said you want to look at not just the students, but my colleagues, like who are our staff? We should be looking at, and I believe Becky was saying this as well. I'm going to write down you said not just my students. I know these coming kind of fast and first I want to find that again. I'm going to write down the value and uniqueness each child and staff member brings to our preschool classes. And NAEYC, they really do that. And ECHRS 3, they let us know we're looking at interactions for everyone. How valuing everyone. Do our peers feel valued? Do our colleagues feel valued? Do the families feel valued? And I'm of a strong belief when we take care of our teachers or educators or staff, as ECHRS 3 puts it, the overflow of that wonderful energy and knowledge is much more easy to happen for families and children when it's happening amongst the staff. So I love that you said that. We will receive a link to the recording. I do believe the answer to that is yes. Karen is going to show, again, this is going to be a part of the whole portfolio of the series. And so Karen will let you all know how to get to those previous recordings and how to get to this one as well. Also want to let you know that if you want to, if you wanted to copy the chat, you can always do that. And we'll show you how to do that. Really, you just go to the little link, those 3 dots there, and it'll let you know how you can save the chat so that you can have all of these resources. We hope you can join us for March 14th. That is our final part of this series. Becky, can you believe it? When we first started talking about this, was like was it this same time last year?
No, we were on lockdown and COVID, I think.
Oh my gosh. So you all, this is the masterpiece of, if there is a silver lining, we were in
like
lockdown.
2.5 years in planning.
Yes, we were planning, what can we do? How can we respond to participants in all of these webinars saying, we love it when everybody comes together. We like to hear from ECPL and CHOICES and STARNET at the same time. How can we talk about equity and unity and then everybody's always presenting separately? So this one, it's like the last push to birth our baby, Becky, March 14th, 2023. The whole series has been wildly popular. We're grateful. People have not only registered, but they've showed up, right? Sometimes you get 60 people to register, and then that night there's 10 on. We've consistently had 50 people. So we hope that your schedules will allow you to join us on March 14th. This is the title of that final one. We're doing that same thing, NAEYC, DEC recommended practices, but really putting going that extra mile to put everything together. So we hope we'll see you on March 14, same bat time, same bat channel. These are the we put in the link. Get involved, really, really get involved. Illinois AEYC just had their biannual conference in October. And guess what? Woo-hoo-hoo. Sharing a vision. We're back in person, baby. So put this on your calendar, October 4th through the 6th. We back at the beautiful Embassy Suites Hotel and Conference Center in Peoria. And I'm telling you, every year, put it on your calendar. This is, first of all, let me just back up. Request for presentations does not close until February 16. If you, and I mean anyone, if you've, hey, I've got some things I feel like I could share, and I'm a private facilitator. I'm a home facilitator. I'm early intervention. There is something for everyone in sharing a vision. This is the link to that. Oh, I don't know, Anne, if you, one of you all could put it in there. This is the link. Okay,
I put
thanks
it
so
in,
much.
And I want to say there's an opportunity to do presentations, but if you're like, I got something, but I don't know if it's like enough or big enough or whatever, there's also an opportunity for posters. So say you've got a great family engagement strategy and you want to share that, you could do a poster about it. And it's briefer and you don't have to feel nervous if you're worried about like being up, you just do a display and people walk by and talk to you.
Someone should do a poster reflecting on my classroom, reflecting from the balcony. There.
Each and every child's gifts and strengths. You could
We
totally
just gave
do
you
it.
a poster idea.
How I
So
changed my
save
class.
this, you've got to February 16th. Go ahead and enjoy Valentine's Day, whether or Valentine, Galentine, Palentine, whatever it's going to be. And then make sure by February 16th you get that in. By all means, we hope that you will keep this on your calendar. Illinois Division of Early Childhood, we host this, we coordinate this conference every other year back in person. This year again at the Embassy Suites. You also, once you get on that site, you can sign up for how to like stay abreast of what's happening so that when the hotel reservations open up, you can get your reservation in. We sell out the Embassy Suites every time this conference is face-to-face, and folks start having to look for overflow hotels. So get that reservation in, get that money in now, as you're moving towards the end of the year, get that in your budget line. Just wanted to show you real quick, this is what STARNET regions look like. Know your region, find your region. All are here to serve you. Thank you all so much for hanging in there with us today.
Thank you.
We're going to go a little bit over so I can turn you over to Karen and show